What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with Tech Daily, and in this video, we're going to be unboxing the brand new Samsung Galaxy A21. Now, this is a really interesting phone for a couple of reasons. First off, here in the United States, this is going to be the most widely available sort of budget A-series phone. It's coming to the big carriers, the prepaid networks, and I think it's going to be a popular device for folks looking for something affordable. However, it's kinda sorta already outdated in a way. Samsung came out with the A21s a few weeks ago, which is more of an international phone, not really available here in the US yet, but it's a step up. It's a better device than this one, and it's sort of weird that Samsung would release both the A21 and A21s at the same time. Looking past that though, I do think this regular A21 is still a somewhat competitive device on its own. It does fit nicely in the now very big lineup of A-series phones Samsung has released this year so far, and I am still excited to check it out. So enough talking, let's go ahead and dive on in here and see what the new Samsung Galaxy A21 is all about. If you've seen literally any other A-series phone unboxed, the packaging and setup here with this A21 is basically the same, but I'll go through it anyway just so you can see what all comes inside. Sliding off the outer sleeve here, the first thing we see is a small little package with Samsung written right across the front. And inside is actually just some instructions and paperwork in a couple languages. Interestingly enough, this documentation seems to be for both the A21 and cheaper A11, which is a little strange. You'll notice too that we do not get any included clear case with the A21 either, so that's kind of a shame. Next, we have the phone itself, of course, and I'll set it to the side for just a moment while we go through the rest of the stuff that's included. First, we get the SIM ejector tool in a little baggie here so it doesn't get lost, and then of course you also get a USB-A to USB-C charging cable and the standard 15-watt Samsung branded fast charging wall plug. All in all, nothing unexpected here with this stuff. So here is the Samsung Galaxy A21 itself. You can see it comes in this shiny black color, which is actually the only option available right now. And yes, that ugly sticker on the back does come off cleanly, so no worries there. First off, let's actually talk about pricing and availability with the A21. Like I said, this phone here in the US is already available on the big networks like Verizon, T-Mobile, and Sprint. And its full retail price looks to be $249. But right now, there's a bit of a sale running with the phone actually being listed for $199. The A21 is also available on Metro by T-Mobile and should be coming to Cricket and Boost and possibly some other carriers sometime soon. And eventually this phone should be available unlocked as well for somewhere between $180 and $250. That's basically the price range I'm going to use for this video. Like I mentioned a second ago, if you've seen most of the other A-series phones, this A21 is probably going to look pretty familiar, but there are a few important things to point out. First off, the A21 is a 6.5-inch device. It's a really big phone, and even though like the A71 has a bigger screen, for example, the A21's form factor, its body and housing, is larger because of the bezels that frame it. Just by sheer size, it is the largest A-series phone in the lineup, and you can certainly feel that in the hand. In one sense, getting a big device with a huge screen like this for $200 is a pretty good deal. Obviously, there's a lot of screen real estate here to enjoy your content, but this is the kind of phone that just doesn't really fit everyone. It's a bit tougher to use one-handed. You've really got to stretch to reach those corners and sides of the phone, and I'd say if you have any issues with even like a 6-inch phone, this is probably going to be too big for you. Maybe if you have the chance, try it in store before you buy it if you can. It's really hard to overstate just how large of a device this phone is. Design-wise, we get a bit of a refreshed look with a hole punch camera cutout up front that's off-center there, similar to how the A11 looks, though down below we still have a fairly large-sized bottom bezel that does contribute to the phone's larger overall size. So while Samsung made some changes to give the phone a more modern look, it doesn't exactly compete with the likes of the A51 or A71, for example, and it still has that more budget phone design to it. Though to be honest, as much as I like to complain about the bezels and borders, it's not terrible and doesn't really negatively affect anything with the phone, aside from adding some extra millimeters all around. As far as the housing and materials, since this is an A-series device, you've got a plastic back that sort of imitates glass, though you can tell pretty easily that it is a cheaper plastic material. I think it still looks pretty good. I just wish this phone came in a couple of other colors, or maybe had that rainbow effect some other A-series phones have. I know some people like this super simple look, but I miss having a bit of character and color. One other thing worth noting, the frame of this A21 is a matte finish. The rest of the A-series phones have a glossy frame. Again, it doesn't really matter, but I think it just adds to this phone looking a bit more basic and boring, and perhaps a little cheaper compared to the rest of the lineup. And by the way, if you're curious, here is what the A21 looks like when compared to the A21s. You can sort of see the A21s has slimmer bezels around the screen, different camera module around back with better lenses, that shiny shimmering finish, and inside the A21s is the better, more powerful phone too. I'm gonna have a more in-depth comparison video with these two phones soon, so look out for that. But if you're just looking for the straight answer, the A21s is the better option, obviously, and if you have the opportunity and you want to spend a little bit more money, you should probably get that phone instead, to be totally honest. Taking a look around at everything else, on the left side there's the SIM and SD card tray, the right side has the volume and power buttons, down below there's the headphone jack, USB-C charging port, and the single downward firing speaker. Across the back you can see a whole bunch of new camera lenses, which I'll go over in just a minute, and next to that we get a rear mounted fingerprint sensor. I've probably said this a million times already, but I like having the physical rear mounted fingerprint sensor on these more budget friendly phones. They're easy to use, inexpensive to include, fast, accurate, secure, and I personally just prefer them over the in-display readers of even some of the flagship phones. In addition to that, the A21 also supports Face Unlock, which is great. I always pair up both unlocking methods together to get into my phone as fast as possible, though more often than not, Face Unlock is what's going to quickly get the job done, and that's exactly what I'm seeing here on the A21. When it comes to the display, its big size is only part of the story, and there's actually something really important to talk about here with the A21. The phone packs a 6.5-inch IPS LCD panel with a resolution of 1600 by 720 and cramming in around 270 pixels per inch. Last year's A20 had a 6.4-inch Super AMOLED screen, which is a fantastic display. It was probably the selling point of that phone last year, and one of the main reasons why so many people, including myself, recommended it. I really have no idea why Samsung went backwards here with the A21 and offered an IPS LCD display rather than AMOLED like the A20. It's a bad choice in my opinion, and not even the A21s has an AMOLED screen either, so I just don't really get it. In general, there's nothing necessarily wrong with the A21's display. It's bright enough, it's colorful enough, and it looks good enough from most angles, but it's just not AMOLED. It doesn't offer the punchy colors, the high saturation, the extra brightness, the deep blacks. AMOLED is what sold me on the A-series phones last year, but especially the A20, and Samsung showing up with a worse display option with the A21 feels a little dirty. My only thought with this is probably that they're just trying to differentiate this cheaper A21 from the more expensive A31, A51, and A71 phones, which all have AMOLED screens. But the problem is that they already gave people the better AMOLED screen last year with the A20, and it's just unfair in my opinion to try and upsell folks to a different, more expensive phone or charge them more for something they already had. The A21 should have had an AMOLED screen, the A21s really should have had an AMOLED screen, and I'm disappointed Samsung made this choice with this phone. If you don't have an A20, it's not a big deal. If you have some cheaper device or something like that from another brand, it's okay, but I know A20 owners from last year probably won't be happy with this move. In regards to the out loud listening experience, we get just the one single speaker down below, which is mostly fine. Here's a sample so you can get an idea of what it sounds like. It's about what you'd expect. It's the same as all the other A series phones, and like I've said with every Samsung release now, it's really time for them to just upgrade the speaker setup and give stereo sound on these phones. Inside, the A21 packs an interesting array of specs that are on par with any given budget device, but I think are good enough to compete. You get the MediaTek Helio P35 processor, which is a surprising choice, 3GB of RAM, and 32GB of storage with the option to throw in an SD card. Like I said, really the biggest thing seems to just be Samsung's new commitment to go with MediaTek now rather than their own Exynos chipset, which in the end I think is actually the right move. This year in particular, I've found the MediaTek processors on a number of phones to be surprisingly good. The A31 has the P65 and it's been great, so I think any bad reputation they might have had in recent years should be reconsidered. Here is the Antutu benchmark score for my A21. I get a combined score of 106,018, and right out of the box, honestly, this phone does feel pretty good. Just flipping through the apps, browsing the web, playing YouTube videos, things like that, obviously you aren't going to see many issues. While another gigabyte of RAM might have been nice, I think for around $200, this is probably the spec list and performance you can expect. An SD card is definitely necessary. 32GB of storage isn't a whole lot, and half of that storage is taken up by Android and the pre-installed apps anyway. Obviously, Android 10 and Samsung's One UI 2 look and feel just like they do on the rest of Samsung's 2020 devices. Really, the big test with this phone I think is going to be performance, and just in my initial tests here, I think things look pretty decent. I'm going to do a more in-depth test and dedicated gaming video soon as well to really get a better judge of performance, but I think the A21 is going to be good enough to handle most things you might want to throw at it. Like I said, the MediaTek processor now in 2020 isn't a negative, especially seeing how poorly Exynos processors have performed in the past. So don't be surprised if more and more devices, especially from Samsung, pack in this kind of setup, and give it a try firsthand before critiquing it. I've been surprised this year with the performance of MediaTek processors, and I think a lot of other folks will be too. Also, the A21 is powered by a pretty sizable 4,000 milliamp battery. Obviously, I don't have any usage info yet since I just took this phone out of the box, but I expect it to offer really solid battery life. Even with the big screen, you have a low resolution display, the more budget-friendly specs, and overall a package that shouldn't draw too much from the battery power. Paired with that 15-watt fast charger, I'm willing to bet this is going to be a good device for all-day use and then some, but I will certainly test that out. Finally, let's talk cameras. And like every other A-series phone thus far, this is where Samsung focused a lot of their attention. The A21 offers a quad lens setup, which includes a 16 megapixel main lens, 8 megapixel ultra-wide lens, 2 megapixel macro lens, and 2 megapixel depth sensor. In general, those lens options are okay, definitely an upgrade over last year with plenty more shooting modes, but you are still missing some things. There's no night mode, no slow-mo, and compared to the A21s and most of the other higher-end A-series phones, you're a bit limited in that main lens capability in regards to the megapixels. With pro controls, wide angle, macro, portrait shots, and a few other things, you definitely have some potential though, and like I said, compared to the A20 last year, you do get some worthwhile upgrades. Up front, the selfie camera is a 13 megapixel f2.0 aperture shooter, and the thing about this lens is that for whatever reason, just in my initial tests, portrait selfies get over softened and sort of beautified pretty heavily. This isn't anything new. We've seen this softening beauty effect on Samsung phones before, but it's like very, very obvious on this phone. Standard selfies look pretty good though. There's a lot of detail, good balance, and skin tones are on point. I don't have any complaints, and I'd even go as far as to say actually that selfies on the A21 are pretty good. So there you go, those are my initial thoughts and first impressions of the new Samsung Galaxy A21. While there are some things about this device I don't necessarily like, mainly that LCD screen, I still think it's going to sell well this year. It's likely going to be that go-to budget phone for folks in the US once again, and I'm interested to see what people have to say about it. What do you guys think? Is the A21 something you're even considering? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to know your thoughts, of course. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. Be sure to follow Tech Daily on Twitter and subscribe to the Tech Daily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.